All right, welcome to the Two Sons podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, buddy.
Before we go any further, Mr. Luke Hoffaker became a father
I'm a papa.
2 days ago.
On the 13th.
Dude, G-Man came out looking totally normal, not alien-like.
Dude, he straight up looked like an alien. Are you kidding me? Dude, babies, their heads just get like so... I don't know. Like he looked like the alien off of Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, you said his head was like elongated.
Dude, it's super elongated. I don't know if I showed you a picture, but
it looks
wild.
pretty normal now, though.
Yeah, he's actually a pretty cute kid. I was pretty certain we were going to have an ugly child for some reason.
Dude, it's a big moment.
It's a huge moment. Thank you. Thanks. We're stoked. Just really quick, a huge shout out to Elena. Like, she kicked butt. Child labor is not easy,
dude,
and she did amazing things. And then also a huge shout out to like all of our friends and family. Like, we've had an incredible amount of support.
Mm-hmm. Makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
It's awesome. Yeah, so it's been great.
I want to also say, like, I just was incredibly impressed, especially as you were kind of breaking down the process for me. I am so impressed by our medical field. Like, you and I have talked, like, there's a lot to gripe about with the medical system in America for good reason. And that's a lot. Like, we could do 17 pods on that shit.
True.
But, like, the actual professionals themselves,
yeah,
I remain so incredibly impressed by them.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by you every time I need to pick your brain about something that's going on. Or like when I look at how well oiled that machine is and how serious those people take their jobs. Like, I just think, and even we have two friends that are emergency responders and like same type of deal. Like, those people amaze me every day. And like, it makes me just feel very small in the world in a good way, because like I appreciate that there are people that have devoted their lives to that kind of work. Seriously.
She got exceptional care. It was good all around. Good all around.
This is the way.
This is the way. Chester McGillicuddy Heffaker is alive and well. Just kidding. We'll do a real name drop, but not yet. The internet's weird.
Someday in the future. We might even hold him up like this, like Simba style at some point.
G Heffaker.
G, yeah. So I am so excited to see you right now, because that not only was that just a completely jam-packed episode of Mandalorian, but it tied into Bad Batch. Did you notice that?
No.
Okay, so...
Dude, fill me in on that.
Like, they basically...
So really quick, we're doing Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, and then Bad Batch...
I don't know which episode it is, but it's the most recent one.
Yeah, I forget what episode it is.
In the actual episode of Bad Batch, which we'll get to...
I wrote it down. It's 13.
Pabu. Yeah, episode 13 on the planet Pabu. Yeah. And we're going to get to the actual episode of Bad Batch way in the end. But
it turns out our viewers are way more into Mandalorian.
So shout out to y'all for coming back for Mando.
Yes.
So the thing is like, that particular episode wasn't overly like... I mean, we'll get to it later, but that season has delved a little bit into the Empire's cloning operations.
This is Bad Batch.
Yes, and they went out of their way to talk about
of clones.
Yes, and so we actually...
Oh, I know where you're going. Okay.
Yeah, so Dr. Pershing was an Imperial scientist that was basically continuing the research that we see...
That's right.
In Bad Batch. Essentially, they're like, Dr. Pershing is giving this big speech in Coruscant, and he's talking about...
TED Talk.
A TED Talk,
yeah. Star Wars TED Talk.
I attended your talk yesterday. It was great. You interested me. I was super interested in that because, like, I can tell now that they're building towards something between both of these shows, which is something I appreciate.
Yes.
We saw basically a Imperial official who's running some sort of cloning operation, trying to force the cooperation of the Kaminoans.
Yes.
And Dr. Pershing specifically stated basically that the Kaminoans were at the forefront of this entire movement.
Right.
And he brought up, like, you can tell Dr. Pershing, and I mean, cloning in and of itself obviously has a lot of moral gray area.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that they even brought that up.
Exactly. Right. But he definitely is very interested in like the positive benefits, like organ cloning and all these different things. Yeah, exactly. He's all like, I'm stoked to do this for the New Republic now because I want to do it for good.
Right.
But he did make mention of the fact that he straight up threw Palpatine under the bus and was like, used it for his own purposes. And then talked about the Kaminoans. So I have a feeling that we're going to have some sort of connection by the end of Bad Batch that kind of points in that same direction.
I think Disney is smart enough and Star Wars is big enough to where they probably are intentional about the whole entire like cloning pipeline that they're trying to push in each in each season, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I was very curious because I could see how a lot of people would watch this last episode and be very indifferent about it. And I was very curious
to see. It slows
see,
way down in the middle when you're going through that. Yeah.
And it's kind of an odd duck episode.
It is very weird.
When Elena and I were watching it, she's like, this does not really feel like Star Wars. And I was like, yeah, like I totally agree with you. And not in a bad way. Like it was
felt like Hunger Games a little bit.
I thought the exact same thing. Actually, so in college, I had to do this. Like, you have to get a certain amount of like art credits, right? So like, even though I'm a science major, I've got to get art credits, right? And
efficiency.
I know it's just
monetarily and with your time. This is one of my big soapbox things that we won't get into.
We'll get that next time, right? No, but I actually had to take a course called Art History and Cinema. And we broke down like the origins of like cinematics, right? And there's actually this movie made in 1927, and it was a German sci-fi movie. So we're talking like origins of what is modern day film. Okay. And it's called Metropolis, which was really, really interesting because Metropolis is like futuristic sci-fi. The droid driver looked incredibly similar to the type of like robots that we see in Metropolis. All of a sudden, like Coruscant was like vibrant, and all the buildings that they were showing were extremely like Art Deco style, which was Metropolis. Like it was very Art Deco. And then they even dropped what was that word that you used? The
Ecumenopolis? Yeah.
What? How do you? I can't say it.
Ecumenopolis, I think, is what it was. Yeah. So which basically means city planet.
Yeah. Yes. So even that word is incredibly similar to the word metropolis, and it was just incredibly interesting to me that they like leaned so heavily into that. And
it was deliberate.
It had to have been, and if it wasn't, then I'd be shocked. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so that was like a cool like little thing where it's just like anybody who's like really into filmmaking would notice that and be like, holy cow! Like they went through great efforts to like put a huge Easter egg, not even Star Wars related, but just like filmmaking related. And I just thought it was an awesome touch again. Like so, it's so interesting, so interesting.
I appreciate the effort that the Lucasfilm story group has put into kind of connecting all of this together. So Luke and I are, I actually am very close. I only have like 20 minutes left in the newest High Republic book.
Nice.
But we each read all three of the previous.
The main ones.
And you can find those videos deeper down in our YouTube channel. If you go back, we did breakdowns.
Yeah.
But in one of those books, I think it might have been the first one, there's a scene where Chancellor Lina Soh, I can't believe I remembered that. I forget so many names. Like I'll forget NBA players' names in the middle of a show, but I remembered Lina Soh, the Chancellor of the Republic, approximately 500 years before the. So literally, she's having like a moment in this courtyard,
right? And
they describe this Peak of Umate, which is like a mountain that is jutting out from this courtyard, just the tip of a mountain, right. And it's the highest point on Coruscant.
Natural point,
and
it's
the only point. Yes, and it's the only exposed part of the planet that remains. And when I saw that, and when I saw it in the background, and when she started asking what it was, I was like, "That's the thing." The thing. No, I was so down for that. I'm like, I love tying all this stuff together.
Yes, and it's just another great example of people doing their homework. Like that's what we love. Like I'm sorry, but you cannot have that in a in a Star Wars related show unless you know your stuff. Mm-hmm. There's no way that would have shown up with Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams.
Exactly.
Like there's no way that would have showed up in episode 7, 8, or 9. Which is again, like we've talked about this at length. We're not going to get into it again, but that's what's so frustrating about those movies. Like there's so much detail that you can pack into Star Wars, and they do
without trying overly hard,
without even trying. Yeah. And they do such a good job, and we love it so much. And what's cool about it too is it's not just us that thinks that that's neat, right? Like for the general public, anybody who knows anything about Star Wars, if you ask them to name a couple worlds, they're going to say they know Tatooine, and they're going to say they know Coruscant.
Yeah, Tatooine, right? Coruscant, Hoth.
Exactly.
Endor,
maybe, yeah. And
those are the core 5, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. of known cityscapes of Star Wars.
That's the Mount Rushmore +1 of Star Wars planets.
Yes. But my point is seeing an exposed mountain face in Coruscant, I think would interest the general viewer. You don't even have to be a Star Wars nerd to find that that's cool, and they still did it. And again, I think it was an awesome touch for Star Wars nerds like you and me. But I think Elena and like other people would think that that was like really interesting too.
Well, I think it's a good example of the kind of thing you can do in a TV show more so than you can in a book, in a movie, because like in a movie, like they're so obsessed with runtime and how do we get this down to 2 hours and 43 minutes? Okay, well we have to do this, we have to do that, and like. But even above and beyond little details like that, they miss so many opportunities in the sequel trilogy, which we don't have to get into. So I want to get back into the Dr. Pershing thing in a little bit, but I think we need to hit the main characters first. So, I thought it was super interesting that Bo-Katan basically wanted to ensure that Mando did not know anything about the mythosaur before leaving. I loved the way that they provided an explanation for why it showed up. The TIE bombers causing
opening up,
shifting
like
of the Earth, basically, which explains why he fell. Because she basically said that he was like, shallow. I didn't expect it to be that deep, and she's like, it didn't used to be that deep.
I see.
Clearly, the bombers opened everything up, but like she was very comfortable with leaving that room with the mythosaur being unclaimed.
Why do you think that was?
I think she's gonna go back for it.
And she's going to try and tame and ride a mythosaur? I think it's going
to be Mando with the Darksaber and her with the damn mythosaur, and that's going to be like their thing.
I see. I don't know. That could be really cool. If we see Bo-Katan riding a mythosaur, I'd be stoked.
I think you're going to see Bo-Katan ride a mythosaur.
Sick.
Yes, I think it's a possibility because Bo-Katan I think is an incredibly cool character in this show.
Oh yeah, and she's growing on me big time.
And shout out to the actress, and I'm mad that I don't have her name written down. But she also did the voice of Bo-Katan in the Clone Wars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And like, how rare would that be to be able to slide right into the live action role as well? And she pulls it off. She's a rock star, man.
Yeah, like, she's killing it.
Because like voice acting, I would imagine, is very different from the actual real acting.
Yeah, I'm sure it's incredibly different. So I thought that was really interesting too, and I was kind of trying to get the angle on like why did she not want Mando to see the mythosaur? Like, why is that a big deal? And I'm curious to see where that goes. It could go a number of directions. Also, did you notice her like whole entire like aura change after she had seen the mythosaur? So like, she like her aura started changing. I don't know if aura is the right word. It's kind of an odd term.
No, I think you're right. I think you're on the head there.
But it kind of starts to change when she sees Din Djarin taking the living waters so incredibly seriously, right? Like she's down there and essentially
mesmerized by his faith, you mean?
Yeah, and then it's almost like impactful for her to see, and then that's when it starts to change a little bit for her. But then she sees the mythosaur, and then from that point on, she seems dead serious about like what is Mandalorian heritage. She hadn't taken off her helmet yet, which I don't know if that was intentional or not. But she starts to say stuff like, "This is the way," and I thought that was really interesting. And it wasn't.
She said it just like 15% sarcastic when she said it.
Kind of, but she's saying it, and it was unprovoked. She did not have to say it. Din Djarin had said it in the past, and he would be like, "This is the way," and she just like kind of stare at him like, "Oh my gosh, you're just a crazy person." But now she's starting to say it, and why I think it actually was intentional when she did say it is because at the end of the episode, when she gets essentially like inducted unwillingly into the
you've been baptized.
Yeah.
I was rescuing him. No, but did you take your helmet off? Baptized.
You're a part of us. She takes off the helmet in front of them. So, but everyone says this is the way, and she doesn't say it. So I think she felt uncomfortable saying it in that situation because it was a lot for her. But when it was just her and Din, I think she was willing to say it, and because I think she meant it and felt comfortable saying it. Now that's probably a huge deep dive, and maybe not even something that the directors and producers and actors were trying to portray. But that's what it honestly felt like to me.
I'm really curious to see the direction this is all going. This episode. Now we were going into the end of last episode like, what the hell are they going to do next?
Right.
And I'm even more confused now because a couple things. There's a bunch of massive question marks. Who is the Imperial warlord that had all of those starfighters that attacked them when they were leaving the planet?
Incredibly maintained fleet.
Yeah, like
the TIE bombers. TIE interceptors.
We did not see a capital ship though, for whatever that's worth.
But there had to have been one close by.
Yeah, or somewhere else on the planet they had some sort of base set up.
Yeah, but I feel like they'd know if it was on the planet, right?
I think you're probably right.
I think I think there was a capital,
especially with her living there and her leaving and returning to the planet. Her scanners would have probably picked it up.
Really,
I'm curious to go ahead.
Really quick, because I know, like, okay, what direction are we going to? Like, right? Don't forget that idea. But I really hope that they don't try and bring in Thrawn as that capital ship owner, because it wouldn't make sense. Like when we said we want to see Thrawn, it's got to be Thrawn looking out for the entirety of the galaxy. And at this point, if he was trying to hunt down Din Djarin and Bo-Katan, that would not follow his characteristics as like who we know him from the books. Anyways,
do you think we could safely assume that Filoni and Favreau have read the Thrawn books? I believe so.
I would think that they have, and if they haven't, they've at least sat down and gotten detailed briefing on it. I'm sure.
I think Filoni has for sure read them, and Favreau maybe most likely.
I think both of those guys truly love Star Wars, and I think as even a fan, they'd probably.
If you're a Star Wars fan, you have to read the Thrawn books.
Yes, the 6 of them.
They're all 6 of them are literally I would say that I've had as much fun as a Star Wars fan reading those books as I have through any Star Wars content.
For sure,
they're unbelievable. So here's the thing: they would not allow it.
I would hope not.
Did
Star
you catch
Wars
all
does
that
some
weird
crazy
shit
stuff
with Dr. Pershing and the comm officer Elia Kane? Did you happen to catch when the other amnesty group
Yes.
loosely referenced like some rumors about what happened to Moff Gideon?
Yes.
I think it's going to be Moff Gideon.
Okay. It might be. But I was super curious to see what that would be. Because and again, there's different tiers of what is the remnants, the Imperial Remnants, right? Like, there's like the low tiers that are just essentially like loyalist stormtroopers that have beat up, dirty armor,
and they're just getting their paycheck.
And and then there's like the actual like MOFs that still exist, that still have Star Destroyers,
all the resources,
that still have all the resources. They're essentially like crime bosses in certain sectors of space, is what it seems like, and they still have shiny white armor, like shiny, TIE fighters and stuff like that. Like they're very much so doing okay.
I loved seeing the TIE interceptors,
dude.
So
so Bo-Katan's class of ship. I wanted to talk about this last episode, but we just ran out of time.
We saw that in Clone Wars, right?
We saw it in Clone Wars, and actually,
it's a Mandalorian ship.
It's a Mandalorian ship, and for a while, Darth Maul has one, and he's cruising.
That's right.
And
I
his is sick.
forgot about
his is like
that.
decked out. It's like black, and it's like really sleek. It's either called a Gauntlet class Starfighter or a not a Gauntlet.
I wish I could remember.
Not a Guardian. It's another G word. I can't remember. I want to say it's like. Oh, dude, are you trying to look it up?
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
I want to say it's Gauntlet or I forget it.
Here it is. It's the Comrook class.
Yeah, so they have a nickname for it, which is really cool. And it's
Gauntlet. It's called the Gauntlet Starfighter.
Yeah, dude,
a starship designed by rogue members of Mandal Motors Corporation for use by the violent Mandalorian splinter group known as the Death Watch.
The Death Watch, dude. That is cool. That is classic.
Shout out to Wikipedia.
Yes, Wiki. No, but so, like super cool.
It's like basketball reference, but for Star Wars. But
yes.
Anyway, go ahead.
One of my favorite classes of starfighters, and seeing that in action with what is like the Naboo Starfighter as well, with Din Djarin's ship, like just incredibly filmed. And in that one part where Bo-Katan makes like one of her wings open up and the other one like
shuts
closes,
the engines off,
and then does like an about face and just lights up that TIE interceptor, was the dopest thing.
I appreciated that because, like, you know, one of the things that makes sense about that is they're flying in atmosphere.
Yes.
And so in theory, like, it's like just throwing up flaps on one side of the airplane that turns the airplane. Like it made sense to me. I appreciate when they put effort into making ships
too. So again, like these details that they're putting into Star Wars is incredible.
Much better than the arcing laser fire.
Dude, don't even get me started. So we were talking about, before I cut you off, we were talking about the direction of where Mandalorian's going.
So they bomb the shit out of Bo-Katan's home.
Right.
So we can safely assume that Bo-Katan now is homeless, essentially.
Yes.
And it seemed like all she had there was a droid anyway.
Yeah,
and she basically said all the Mandalorians had left her.
Yes.
So Din Djarin goes, I know a place that no one will follow us. They go to the covert. There's this really cool moment where when they show up, Paz Vizsla as being just a jerk again, as usual.
He's so bitter.
Dude, he's bitter. He's just like, I know you kicked my ass, but you're not one of us.
I know.
But like actually he beat Din Djarin, didn't he? And then the lady
No, he was
him.
about to beat him, and then Din Djarin, Paz Vizsla essentially takes the Darksaber from Din, and then Din, because he's incredibly inefficient with the Darksaber, then is able to
beat
use
him
his
without
regular
it.
stuff and beat him without it.
Yeah. There's that would be interesting if they flipped it and then Bo-Katan got the Darksaber and he ended up riding the Mythosaur. That'd be an interesting little wrinkle.
That would.
You know what's funny is I need to rewatch Boba Fett because I've rewatched the last 3.
That'll be enough to get you back into what is like Mandalorian and Grogu storyline.
That makes sense because I watched each of the first 2 episodes of seasons of Mandalorian through all again like last year. I just need to rewatch Boba Fett. But so so they have this baptism moment ish thing where she dumps the living water in and proves it, and then it kind of reminded me of what happens a lot in organized religion, where there's kind of like this moment of testimonial where all the members of the church kind of like hang out with you and congratulate you. They all kind of walk up to him and give him one of these.
Yeah, it was a big community.
Big like community kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And then she's like, you can leave whenever you want, but like as long as you're here and your helmet's on, you're one of us, like it or not.
Which would have been hilarious if she just takes off her helmet. Well, okay, a side note too. Apparently
she's just like, shh.
That water is incredibly valuable because that's actually what, come to find out, that's what she's been dumping into the water before she starts doing her like armor stuff, right?
Oh, it's the only thing that can cool off the Beskar, huh?
Perhaps.
Okay.
And my thought, just being incredibly analytical, it's actually a plague for me half the time, is like Mando should have gotten more for her. Like that's incredibly valuable.
You need a couple more buckets of this stuff. Like I can go back there. Yeah.
My guy, like, get more. You got like a little test tube of that stuff, and apparently it's incredibly valuable. And apparently she needs it like every single time she does her job. So, anyways, sorry.
So I'm just curious to see which direction this is all going because I was under the impression going into the season that it'd be more likely that Din Djarin would leave the Watch, like as a way of life, that they could find a way to get him out of his helmet.
Right.
And instead, we've gone in the opposite direction, and now Bo-Katan's one of them too.
I know, dude, I know.
I'm really curious to see where they're going in the long run there.
Bo-Katan's one of them too.
Yeah, now we don't see her face anymore. You know, so like I really want to. I'm just excited to find out.
No,
I'm excited to see where it's all going. I think so question mark number 1 is who is this Imperial warlord that's got all these ships?
Yes.
Question number 2 is what the hell is going on with Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and their faith?
Correct.
Okay. Question number 3 is who the hell is Elia Kane and why did she screw over Dr. Pershing?
Dude, and if I remember right, and maybe our viewers could tell us in the comments, like I recognized her face and I remember her being incredibly like cunning and ruthless.
Yeah, well she was Moff Gideon's like second in command, if I remember correctly.
So like all of a sudden she's like a spy for the New Republic, and not only that, but the entire episode, I think it was I think they were trying to portray this as like she's not trustworthy, and I feel like she's still very much so not really part of the New Republic.
I agree.
She is evil. Dude.
Talk about like committed to the bit. Like
yes,
excuse me. Like she is. So, like, I think she's probably still working for Moff Gideon.
Yes.
This is my working theory. Moff Gideon's got all the ships. He somehow escaped. She's still working for him, but as a spy, as part of this amnesty program.
Yes.
My guess is she did take all the lab supplies. So my guess is Moff Gideon has some sort of other doctor somewhere. I don't know. That's kind of my working theory right now.
Supply. She could have gotten the lab supplies anyway.
Maybe she didn't know what she needed.
You're right. Maybe she didn't know what she needed. But yeah, and then what's interesting too is I thought that the entire time I'm like, okay, Moff Gideon's crew is about to come in there, and then they're about to pick up the Dr. Pershing and Kane and take them away. And Kane was a sleeper cell the entire time. But then all of a sudden, the New Republic shows up, and then Kane was a sleeper cell for them. Essentially, and then
tortures him,
and then tortures. But from what it seemed like, he's essentially getting his like mind erased. And if Moff Gideon needed him, damaging that man's brain would not be helpful in advancing what is cloning.
Yeah, so I'm
just as confused as you are.
I am too, because And I had a brief problem with that scene too. I'm like, wait, they just left her alone with this dude in the machine? Like, what the hell? That was a little weird.
Dude,
but
that was so creepy too. When he's like smiling, he's like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then like his like, there's like, you can tell that lights are being shown in his eyes, and it's just like a complete trip for him, and he's just getting his brain fried. Yuck. That was gross. That was hard to watch. There's certain times throughout, like, there's certain like medical related stuff where I see, and just because of my job being a nurse practitioner, like it's very science heavy, right? And like people have to trust me to do a good job with my work. And then when I see people completely abuse like medical related stuff, it gives me the absolute creeps. Like it bothers me to my core.
Okay. I have a follow-up question for you then.
Okay.
All right. So Carly and I watched the first episode of the new season of last night. And it covered psychedelic assisted therapy.
Interesting.
Okay.
We're about to jump in. Yeah, I'm down. This is a nice little side quest.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's kind of directly related to Admiral Akbar's cousin and what he was saying before he got him.
I know. He's like, it helped me.
I did it once. It was great for me.
I know.
So, essentially what psychedelic assisted therapy is, from what I understand, and this is, I am not an expert on this.
Dude, we are deep down into the Joe Rogan podcast.
It has been, but it has a extremely high success rate with veterans that have PTSD. Like from what I understand, like 2/3 of veterans who use it experience like immediate relief from their trauma.
Okay.
And so basically from what I understand, the way that it works is your brain when you're in your conscious state has these like boundaries set up that prevent you from addressing your trauma.
I see. Yeah.
And when you are on these psychedelics, apparently what happens is like those barriers get removed.
Yeah.
And you're much more willing to confront that issue.
I see.
And then apparently when you do, you build like these neural pathways that allow you to have that same
ability
after effect
when you're not.
And apparently they've seen success with it with addiction and with depression.
Interesting.
So now I'm not about to go pop a bunch of mushrooms and talk to a psychiatrist.
Jason just comes in with a level of understanding of Star Wars that no one's ever understood before. You just start talking just gibberish.
I have opened up my mind.
Yeah,
limitless. But like my point is like I'm just curious.
Star Wars
like,
is on a snowflake that's dropping into Whoville. Just you start saying just bat shit, crazy stuff, bat poop, crazy stuff.
You're not on the line here.
Okay.
You don't even have to say anything. Opinion. I'm just. Have you heard? Are you familiar with it? And what's your take on it?
Not super familiar with it. I'd have to see who's doing the research. Because that, on another side note, I think it should be part of a high school curriculum for kids to have to do like a research course and also an economics course, because so many people.
When you say research course, you mean like learning to vet information.
Learning to vet information.
Yeah.
I think our society is incredibly terrible at vetting information. And also we're incredibly terrible with finances as a whole.
Absolutely.
Anyways, but I think if the research was done properly, and if I feel like it was from a legitimate source, then yeah, I think there could be some compelling findings there. I think the biggest thing is ask me if I think that there's a possible benefit to this. And I think from what you've said, it sounds like, yes, there could be. I think it would have to be incredibly regulated. And not only that, I think we'd have to identify the fact that there is essentially a huge opportunity for abuse.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know you know that. And the other thing too is I think just like I think it would be helpful for some and not helpful for others. Just like blood pressure medication. Like I do not need a blood pressure medication, so me taking a blood pressure medication would not benefit me. For some people who are just downright, just completely broken, seeing terrible stuff with war, having intense PTSD, I think you'd maybe have to bring out the big guns, so to say, in order to treat that. And I think that is interesting that they are finding alternative methods for treatment for those types of cases. So it would have to be extremely regulated, and I think just because it would be good for someone doesn't mean it would be good for others. So
that was kind of one of the big things that stood out. First of all, they were like, when you do it recreationally, it's much more dangerous because there's a I can't remember the exact phrase he used, but there was like, there's also a potential with psychedelics for what they call like I'm going to butcher this, but it's like a near hell experience or something like that. They call it, but basically it's like the scariest moment of your life is also an outcome.
A bad trip.
Yeah, exactly. A
so
bad
to
trip.
Speak, right?
So, and one of the things that he said is like the best way to do it is through psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yeah.
There are 2 sober therapists there
that are not there for a good time.
That walk you through the whole thing.
Oh, and so it's you're essentially being walked through.
It's physician assisted.
Analyzing your thoughts while
like they'll ask you questions. They'll be like, so tell me about, like they'll try to discuss your trauma with you apparently like if you had this trauma and we were sober and I tried to talk about it with you, you'd be super reserved, maybe be unwilling.
I see.
But like apparently when you're in this state, you're just like an open book.
I see.
And you'll just discuss anything and like this is what happened and blah, blah, blah. And they'll ask you follow-up questions. How did that make you feel? Like, that kind of thing.
So and the final thought. So that's very interesting. And the idea that someone's there in order to help people navigate their thoughts. There's a term called metacognition that exists in therapy, which is the idea of thinking about the way you're thinking, essentially. And it's actually extremely beneficial and something that we're trying to tap into more as like a healthcare community, is thinking about the way you're thinking. That way you can, it's not bad to think like, oh, I'm anxious right now. Like feeling anxious is not a bad thing, but understanding why you're anxious is exceedingly beneficial to not being anxious, right? Is this something that I can fix? Yes or no? If it is something that I can fix, what do I need to do right now, if anything, to change that, right? So that actually sounds really interesting. The big thing is I have had patients that have overused certain recreational drugs, mushrooms being one of them, and they, for lack of a better term, have fried their brain.
Interesting.
To the point where they did it so often that they had difficulty finding pleasure in life when they weren't using it. And I think
which is general substance abuse related.
General substance abuse, yeah. So, and again, like, the world is about moderation. Alcohol is about moderation as well, right? So, interesting topic.
Yeah, I we just watched it last night, and I was excited to talk to you about it because I found it to be interesting. And again, like I personally, like I am super open minded, so I am not judgmental when it comes to this kind of thing. That said, I personally have never tried a psychedelic, and I have no intention to. But when I heard that, I was like, that's super interesting
for certain groups.
And I am a big believer in trauma. My wife's brother is a veteran. I've kind of worked through some of that stuff with him, and when I hear that kind of thing, and like there are essentially, like, it's really this simple to me. There is a massively higher suicide rate with veterans.
Yes,
that is like a thing. That's a real thing.
The PTSD, terrible stuff.
Yeah, and it's really sad. And like, you know what? If that group wants to try experimental things with that kind of stuff, like I'm so down. Yep. And I'm so down for researching it, and I'm so down for funding it, and find some way to help those people. You know what I mean?
I think it'd be very interesting to see what that looks like in 5-10 years, and see if it's beneficial or not. And it sounds like it could be beneficial.
And 50 years ago, they never would even allowed
of course not.
Yeah. So,
dude, there's a time when alcohol was prohibited.
Yeah, exactly.
like, thank God it's not, by the way, because I'd be in jail.
So I think that just about does it for the Mandalorian episode. I mean, really quick, it's so many question marks right now.
The amnesty, the idea. So we like the cogs of Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Actually, I did want to get into this a little bit.
So the amnesty program is an incredibly interesting idea. And what's cool is you can see that out of that small group of people that Dr. Pershing was talking with when he was walking up into his amnesty housing, that those people were like legitimately like, oh my gosh, like we have a second chance. Like working for the Empire did suck. And it was kind of cool too, because they were very realistic about it. They were like, yes, working for the Empire sucked, but these were the perks. These were the things that we did like working for the Empire, down to like the food, down to whatever.
The organization, right? I thought that was one of the big things that stood out to me was like, this has been a consistent theme in the books that we've read too. The New Republic was a little sloppy.
And wasteful.
With
resources, right? Whereas the Empire was not.
Ruthless.
And they ran a tight ship. They ran truly a tight ship, figuratively and literally. They ran a tight ship. Like they did not have a whole lot of waste in anything, whereas there's a ton of waste that we're seeing with the New Republic, to the point where they're like, oh my gosh, we have all these Imperial resources. Like, what are we going to do with them? And then Dr. Pershing's like, no, we could use this stuff. Like, this is exceedingly valuable. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to toss
and
it.
the dude's response to him was basically like, we're too busy for this.
We're too busy.
Like, we're too busy to even consider this, so screw off.
Which is a really interesting take, because we know our government is incredibly wasteful.
Yes.
Right. And again, we won't.
Every government is.
We won't go into that. But like it is. And so it's again, like seeing like the cogwheel of what is Star Wars, seeing the politics, seeing the way that things are run. It's so incredibly interesting, and we're getting so much of that with this last episode.
It's Reconstruction vibes. Like, I mean, this was a big deal too. Like, I mean, okay, so you win the Civil War. What do you do with the South? Like, what are you going to do? Throw all of them in jail? No, like you've got to find a way to integrate them back into society. Like, it's a real thing, and it makes sense. Like, you've got, okay, so you've defeated the Empire. Well, now there's just literally millions and millions and millions of like Empire employees.
Yeah.
That are just dudes and chicks, and they need to find a way to integrate back into society.
The
it makes
same
sense
thing happened with Nazi Germany. There's all these Germans that had like families and stuff, and they were part of like Hitler's clan.
Yeah.
And they're like, do we like punish these people? Do we put them in jail? Do we let them go back to their families? And from what I understand, a lot of them got to go back to their families and like, be a part of society. The upper echelon.
I was going to say, I think the upper echelon, because wasn't there a big thing where a lot of them tried to run away and disappear?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. But from what I understand, not nearly as many actually got in trouble as you think.
Interesting. I don't know much about it.
So we saw that in like actual society. I know that they actually apparently used some of like the scientists for other work. Like,
really?
Yes. I don't quote. This is not okay. Like, I'm not an expert on this. Everybody.
Historian Luke.
Yeah. From what I understand, they actually used like scientists and apparently like there was things.
Hopefully they did something with the really nasty ones.
They did do stuff with the really nasty ones, but most of them hopefully. BMW benefited from Nazi Germany.
Really?
They had prisoners working in BMW factories. That is fact. That is
super interesting.
Yes, they have pictures of BMW
former Nazi soldiers.
No, like prisoners working in BMW factories.
No, but they were prisoners.
Yes, prisoners of Nazi.
Oh, gotcha. That's what I meant. They were former soldiers who ended up their redemption was to work in the BMW plant?
No. The BMW used prisoners.
What?
Yes.
Wait. Okay, so the people that Nazi Germany imprisoned,
Jewish people,
built cars.
Yes, for BMW.
Man.
That is fact.
Some dark stuff, man.
That is in Dachau concentration camp. Like, you can see photos of like assembly lines of BMW cars being worked on by true prisoners of.
That's gnarly.
Yes. So long story short, incredible detail by Star Wars, and
which we appreciate.
Very realistic. Very realistic. Yeah.
So, really, with the Bad Batch thing, the episode itself was relatively uneventful.
It's kind of warm and fuzzy episode.
Yeah, I thought it set a couple of key plot points, like, what's her name? The one that they used to work for, the pirate chick, not the pirate chick, Sid. Okay, Sid is going to be the one who throws him under the bus to the Empire. That was pretty heavily foreshadowed.
Sid is not the greatest.
Yeah, so Sid's going to throw them under the bus. That's my guess, is they're going to be on that planet living there. Because, like, essentially, who's the other lady they're working for? What's her name?
The other pirate?
Yeah.
Fee?
Yeah, Fee. So Fee is very much like, dude, you've got a kid. Like, go settle down somewhere and like let this kid be a kid.
Right.
And so she actually takes them to this planet.
And there was plot development with Fee too, because we literally did think she was just a pirate, but come to find out she's like I'm a liberator of ancient artifacts or something like that is what she calls herself.
She finds culturally important artifacts for cultures that were lost.
Yes,
and brings them back.
Which actually is a very noble, and she doesn't do it for a whole lot of money apparently. Yeah. So Fee grew in my book a bit. Anyways.
Yeah. So she takes him there to settle down. There's this weird tsunami event.
Which again was incredibly realistic. That's how tsunamis work.
Exactly.
Like, the tide goes out and then pummels countries.
Pretty straightforward, because it was like, oh, we are used to these earthquakes happening every once in a while, but it was like this was just an extraordinarily large one that led to a larger issue.
Yes, which they're going to rebuild, and I'm just like, okay, like, when's the next big one? Obviously, this is unsteady.
Exactly.
Like, let's
hopefully
move,
that's a one every 1,000 years kind of thing.
Yeah, let's move Pabu or whatever it's called, the city of Pabu.
You need a bigger seawall.
Pabu. Yes.
They I thought the entire point of the episode was to make it seem like they were settling down when Sid's obviously going to throw them under the bus.
Yeah. And Tech and Fee have a little...
Just hitting it off, man.
A little love relationship maybe happening.
Good for Tech.
And Omega finds a friend. Omega finds a friend in Leana, I think. Leana, something like that.
Liana.
Leana.
From Game of Thrones.
Liana sounds way better than Leana.
So...
Dude, what am I saying?
Well, your wife's name is Elena, so it's really
I know,
confusing.
everything, yeah.
So I guess the only thing I really wanted to say about this episode is what we said at the beginning, which is I'm really curious to see how they connect all this cloning stuff.
Yes. And again, so I'm growing more and more okay with the whole entire cloning world of what is Star Wars, where we know it goes to, which is Emperor Palpatine being cloned himself is just the ultimate dump on the top of this birthday cake.
It's not the cloning nearly as much as the essence transfer that drives me nuts.
Okay,
it's like
you're actually, you know what? I totally agree with you. No essence transfers.
Well, okay, in Darth Bane, when he attempts to do an essence transfer to Darth Xana, he touches her.
Yeah, and it has
and attempts to
yes,
to
and actually it
infiltrate her
works.
body.
That actually works. You're right. And I think he did the essence transfer properly. We won't go into that.
Yeah,
that
it's a whole other thing.
Deep dive Darth
because
Bane.
Darth Xana twitch it. Yeah,
Yes.
But that's some deep Darth Bane lore that we will get into one day.
You're right.
But,
we do see essence transfer in Star Wars, so maybe I should get over that.
It was proximity by touching, though.
By
he
an incredibly
went to Exegol from freaking Endor
after his body was like lightninged up.
Yeah,
it was just insane. That's so stupid.
Yeah, like it just doesn't make any sense.
Anyways,
like,
turns out episode 7, 8, 9 of the movies are still trash.
Yes, they are still trash. No matter what Dave Filoni does, it's just still trash.
Oh,
all right, guys. That is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate your support. We will see you next week, hopefully for a lot more cool Mandalorian stuff.
Yeah, I feel like they're going in a good direction. And, also, anybody who's a sports nerd, March Madness. Enjoy March Madness, everybody. I'm wearing my U of A Wildcats champion shirt. Hopefully U of A can squeak one out.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm not optimistic because the tournament is all about guards. The NBA playoffs are all about big athletes.
Yeah.
The tournament's all about guards.
And a little bit of luck.
And I'm not a huge fan of our guards. I like our forwards better. But
you don't like Kerr?
I have to feel...
He's a little loose with the basketball. Kerr,
not my favorite.
I'm not hating on you, but just tighten up the passing.
All right, guys. Have a good night.